morning, Willow class. So this week we've been looking at a variety of different things, including fractions and decimals. So today we're actually going to be having a look at percentages. Now, one thing I don't think we have actually done is the percentages of a number. It's really common that you might actually need something like this because when you go to a shop, for example, it might have a sale on and it might say reduced by 20%. So you would need to figure out what 20% is and be able to take this away, okay? So we're going to have a look today at some examples of this, finding the percentage of a number. So on the screen, you can see that I've got the first question, 50% of 200. Now, we know that 50% is a half, okay? So we need to therefore find a half of 200. Just in case some of you have forgot and you can't remember why 50% is a half, let's just have a quick look at this. So I have got 50 here, and a percentage is always out of 100. So I've got 100 here, okay? So it's 50 out of 100. Therefore, there's 50 as the numerator and 100 as my denominator. 50 over 100. If I was to simplify that and find out what that would be, I can see that 50 goes into 100. 50 goes into 50 once, and then it goes into 100 twice. So if I eventually simplified that down, it would give me a half, okay? So that's why 50% equals a half. So when we look at finding a half of 200, we quite simply halve our number. If it's a 3-digit number like this, try to keep it as simple as you can in terms of finding, for example, half of 2, and therefore half of 200. Okay. So a half of 200, well, half of 2 is 1. Therefore, half of 200 is 100, okay? So 50% of 200 gives me the answer 100. Super. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's what we need to do when we find 50%. Now, quite often in the past, when I've taught you about percentages and finding the percentage of a number, I always say find 10% and then find 1%. There is a reason for doing that. However, if it's straightforward as 50%, we just find half. Okay, so don't waste your time finding 10% and then timesing it by 5. Okie dokie, what about finding 10%? Well, again, 10% instead of 50 out of 100 would be 10 over 100. If we then simplified that down, that would be 1/10. So to find 10% of a number, we have to divide by 10. Okay, so to find 10%, we divide by 10. And that's because there are 10 tens in 100. Okie dokie. So 200 divided by 10. Okay, how many tens go into 200? We quite simply, instead of counting up in our tens, we know that to divide by 10, we can move our numbers one place to the right. Okay, so this 2 would go in my tens column. The 0 would go in my units column. My decimal point would be here, and this 0 would go here. So it's 20.0, which is just the same as 20. So 10% of 200 is 20. Okie dokie. Hopefully that makes sense again. Now we move on to some more challenging ones. So I've got 20% here, okay? Now to find 20% of a number, I say to find 10%, okay, because this keeps it nice and simple. So 10% of 350, well, we divide it by 10 to find 10%. So again, we move our numbers one place to the right. So 350 would just simply become 35. If I've got 35, how can I find what 20% is? Well, I can quite simply look and see what have I done to my 10 to get 20. What have I done here? I've doubled it, haven't I? Or I've times it by 2. So if I've times my percentage by 2, I need to times my answer by 2 or double it. So double 35 gives me the answer 70. So 20% of 350 is 70. Okay? Super duper. So let's now move on to 14%. So to find 14%, I have to find 10%, as we know. But now I also need to start to find 1%. The reason that I need to find 1% is because I've got some units now. Here, I didn't have any. I just had tens. And back here, I also didn't have any units either. So because I've now got units, I'm going to find 10% and 1%. Okie dokie. So to find 10%, we know that we divide this number by 10. Okay, so I get the answer 40. Just make that a little bit clearer, sorry. Yeah, 1%, I divide it by 100, okay? So for 10%, I'm going to write this here just to remind you. To find 10%, we have to divide by 10. And then to find 1%, we have to divide by, can we remember what I just said? 100. Okie dokie. Though that's your key facts that you need to remember for this lesson. That's almost like your little success criteria to know that you're not going to go wrong. Okay, so I'm just going to put a big circle around that so you can see it. Right, so I found 10%, 1% I divide by 100. So 400 divided by 100 gives me the answer 4. Super. So now I've found 10% and I've found 1%. However, I need 4. I've got 10, but I need 4. So for 4%, I'm going to actually look at what I've done. What have I done to my units, to my 1, to get 4? Well, I've timesed it by 4, so I need to times my answer by 4. 4 lots of 4 is 16. Okay, this is the important thing now, because sometimes children think, right, I need to add this, and add this. However, I don't need all of them. There are just a few that I need, okay? So I've got 14%, I've got 10 and 4%, okay? So I've got 10%, which is one I need, and then I don't need the 1%, I need the 4%. Okay. So when I come to add, I'm adding 10%, which was 40, and 4%, which was 16. 40 add 16 is 56. Okie dokie. Right, I'm really hoping that does make sense to you. If it doesn't, maybe watch over it again and see if it does, hopefully, okay? So before we move on, I just want to show you another example. So this time I've got 23% of 150. I'm just going to space it out so that we've got one number per square, as you know we do like. Okay. So 23% of 150. So we know to find 10% and to find 1%. Okay, that's what we always do, unless, like I said, it's 50% that I'm finding. So 10% of 150, let's divide it by 10, is 15. 1%, I'm going to divide it by 100. Move your numbers 2 places to the right, and I get the answer. I'll put it in columns so you can see 1.5. Okay, so 15 and 1.5. But I need 20. I don't need 10, I need 20. So let's get 20% here. What have I done to my 10% here to give me 20? Well, I've doubled it, or I've timesed it by 2. So let's times this answer by 2. Double 15 gives me 30. Okay, so 20% is 30. What about 3% though? So I've got here 1%, and the 1%, let me just see if... So the 3% here, what have I done to my 1%? I've timesed it by 3. Good. So now I'm going to do this times by 3, okay? Always think 1 whole times by 3 is 3. A half times by 3. Well, how many halves together? If I've got 1 half, add another half, that gives me a whole. Add another half gives me 1.5. So I've got 3 wholes and 1.5, which gives me 4.5. So now to get 23%, I need my 20% and I need my 3%, okay? Which for the answers is 30 and 4.5. Add those together and I get the answer 34.5. Okay, so 23% of 150 is 34.5. Okie dokie. This is just a question to make you think before you then go on to your learning. What's the quickest way, please, of finding 99% of a number? I could find 10% and then multiply it by 9 to get 90%. I could then find 1% and multiply it 9 to get 9% and add those together. Or what could I do? It's 99 out of 100. That is only one away from 100%. So I could find 1% of this number and simply subtract it. Okay, so 1% of 700. Well, to find 1% here, I'm going to divide by 100. 1% of 700, therefore, is 7. Okay, so I need to, in order to find 99% of this number, I am going to do this, take 100%, which is 700, take away my 1%, which is 7, which gives me the answer 693. Okay, that's just something to think about if you get 98% or 99%. Okay. So your questions are posted below, and always look back at the video if you are struggling. Okay. Good luck, everybody.